A group of soul-surviving strangers are kidnapped into a brutal social experiment for an unknown elite. With cliché armored characters and a dire need to replicate the Cube in Saw franchise, they will put their brains to the test and try to escape. And that's why today in Flick Summary, Escape Room. As the ceiling comes crashing down to a library, a man who can't resist but to spit every word that crosses his mind tries to solve the puzzling key to exit the room. After failing multiple times to find an effective solution, there seems to be no way out. We're introduced to scientist/introvert genius Zoe, who is attending her quantum Xeno effect reading over at her college. But her edgy mind can totally see through this, and so her outlet is to write, "A system can't change while you're watching it." Her down-to-earth teacher expects her to intervene, but is disappointed by her shyness, so he asks for a word after the reading, encouraging her to do something that scares her during this next school break. Next up, we're introduced to Jason, your everyday corpo douchebag who can't see past his own ego. He refers to himself as the Mr. Miyagi of trading after his client offers him a reward for his services, and patronizes his coworker for just standing there like a human tapestry as he orders him to download Karate Kid. We then get to meet that kid who used to play guitar for Iron Weasel. Turns out he put up a few pounds, changed his name to Ben, and now works in the back of a supermarket labeling products? What happened to you? I guess working for Disney led you to depression, huh? Anyway, Ben tries to make ends meet and asks to be put up front desk, but apparently his presence is bad for business. Plus, he's an alcoholic apparently. We get to a point in which all Ben, Zoe, and of course Jason receive a weird-looking black box that apparently does nothing but simply looking good. However, there's more to it, as each of our characters end up discovering that these boxes actually contain an entrance for an escape room where the winner gets to go home with 10,000 bucks. Sweet! Ben gets to the escape room building and stays outside for a minute so he can have a smoke. There, he meets Amanda, a woman who clearly does not tolerate the smell of cigarettes, and leaves the scene. She goes into the building and up to the elevator, but before the doors close completely, the front desk man tells her, "Thank you for your service." Fishy. A nerdy boy named Danny also gets in the elevator with her, and they both go up to a waiting room where we're introduced to one more character, a truck driver named Mike, who seems pretty enthusiastic about trying new things. Ben walks in last and have a short chat with the rest of the group, but since no game master is coming in to give them the instructions, he gets tired of waiting and decides to go outside for another smoke. Thing is, as he attempts to do so, he accidentally pulls the door handle, activating the first room and revealing an oven dial where the handle goes. Off to finding some clues now, Mike picks up a novel called Fahrenheit 451. He finds a screwdriver in between the pages, and of course, our genius lead Zoe recognizes it and uses the number to enter it in the oven dial. But instead of escaping, this only turns the ceiling in the room to an actual oven. They get confused and decide to bang the secretary's window only to get an obviously recorded message by Alexa, but the only one who notices this is Zoe. Now everybody is in shock and they become fixated on opening the window that leads to the secretary's desk. As they tear up the room, Zoe is yet again the only one who pays attention to detail and snags the key to open the window. Everybody is shocked to find a mannequin for a secretary, but stupid is as stupid does. The phone rings and Jason answers to a voice telling him they have to follow the rules at all times. But as the call ends, more heat panels activate and Amanda loses her mind. Zoe tries to calm her down and notices a clue from some Dr. Wu-Tan Yu, which leads her to use the coasters in the coffee table. This opens an air vent where all 6 participants have to go through. But as they do, the room gets fully on fire, almost killing Danny in the process. Funny thought, our nerdy boy thinks this is just a really well-prepped game like no other he's ever been to. Right, like almost being burned alive is part of the game. We're now at a cabin in the woods. The group has to find a code to open a lock which only unlocks with a 7-letter word. Ben sees some deer antlers hang in the wall and some letters carved in the wooden base. This somehow flashes him back to the time where he crashed his car with his friends inside while singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and figures out the code to the lock is none other than Rudolph. Now, how did the game master know Ben was singing that song at the time of the accident? He was the sole survivor of that event, so this does not make any kind of sense. Anyways, the group now steps outside into the snowed woods, and before looking for clues, we get Danny bumping himself against a hologram wall. He starts realizing this might not be a game as the ice cracks and fans start blowing snow. Amanda scavenges a jacket. Mike goes into the trees and pulls out a fishing rod, and the next clue reveals itself as Ben tries to light a cigarette and his foot falls down an icy fishing hole. Now Mike rightfully scolds Ben for being an infant before trying his luck with the fishing rod. But something's obviously missing. Zoe finds a compass in the jacket's pocket and sets out to find where it's pointing at. Turns out there's a prop bear hiding a magnet inside of him. She sticks her hand and pulls out the next quest item, a magnet. They attach it to the rod's hook and manage to pull out an ice mother box with a key frozen inside of it. Overwhelmed and fed up, Ben walks away to have a cigarette. The group realizes they can melt the box with Ben's lighter, so they ask for it. As Danny goes and gets the lighter, the ice beneath him collapses and the current pulls him away from safety as he drowns, and the panicking lot spread out in a futile attempt to rescue him. I guess he does not longer think this is an immersive game, huh? Alright, he does not longer anything. He did. The rest of the crew is obviously shocked, but they now have realized they have to play to save their lives. Now body heat is the only viable option, and they take turns with the jacket so they don't freeze to death as they put their hands around the icebox. Mike holds the now tiny piece of ice to his chest until he collapses, and Jason pulls out the key from the chunk of ice while the rest tries to get Mike back on his feet. Jason makes a break to find the door that will take them to the next room. But when he finally does, the key to that door opens a different exit in the opposite direction. Time is running out, and everybody has to sprint across as the ice cracks and drowning becomes a possibility. Fortunately though, the remaining 5 players make it out alive. Next room. This one could have been pulled out straight out of Christopher Nolan's Inception. It's an upside-down billiard room with falling floor pieces. This happens every time the phone at the center rings, but to actually escape, it requires our heroes to find the missing 8-ball. Now their heads are fully in the game, and it's kind of obvious that the ball is the key to the next room. Hardened veteran Amanda parkours her way to the counter safe, but obviously she needs the passcode. Zoe notices the records on the wall and recognizes it as a giant sliding puzzle. Amanda cracks it and tries to open the safe, entering the code from the puzzle, but it doesn't work. Ben, Mike, and Jason climb their way to safety and more platforms start to fall down. Zoe is hanging on the collapsing puzzle/record wall, and true to the cliche nature of the film, she falls down, hits her head, and has a sudden flashback of her background story. Long story short, she was in a plane accident and saw her mother die. She comes back and has now realized that the code Amanda has must be entered backwards. Amanda opens the safe, snatches the 8-ball, and tries to get to the group so they can get to the next room. But in the process, she drops the ball and hurries to get it back, just as the last platform falls down. Fortunately, Amanda managed to hang by the telephone wire and hands the ball to Jason so he and the rest can escape. As for herself, she realizes there is no way she can get to where the rest of the group is and embraces her final destination. Get it? Once in the next room, yet another quarrel between Jason, Zoe, and Ben arises, given the fact that Amanda has just given her life for them. But there's no room for arguing given the fact that time is of the essence, and this next level is a bit eerie. Mike breaks the silence by staring still at his hospital bed, and it's the exact recreation of the one he actually had. Ben, Zoe, and Jason step in to find, well, their exact same hospital room as well as Amanda's and Danny's. They get to talking and end up sharing the story of how each of them ended up as sole survivors. Ben and Zoe survived a car and plane crash respectively. Mike was the sole survivor of an accident in a mine where he saw his brother died, and Jason was the only survivor of an accident that left him and a friend stranded in the middle of the sea. Ben, Jason, and Mike find an EKG machine next to a poisonous gas supply and realize they have to use the machine to get a specific heart rate to crack the puzzle. Otherwise, the poison gets loose and, well, they die. Zoe, on the other hand, has had enough and decides not to play along anymore. So she starts smashing the cameras in the room, and that's that. I guess we'll see what this is all about later on. Back to the trio of men. Jason calls up on Ben and Mike to be their guinea pigs, but don't get anywhere. In the process, Mike dies, and that's 3 down. 3 more to go. Jason then comes to the realization that his limits need to be pushed. He waits for the gas to go off and for his heart rate to drop so a window opens for them to crawl through. While he's the first one to climb through, Zoe is still fixated on smashing the cameras while Ben tries to convince her to come with them. But she's too headstrong and is left behind. Jason and Ben are now the only apparent survivors, and well, they are once again fighting as one could expect. Ben accuses Jason of being your everyday Patrick Bateman, having killed in order to survive in the past. But oh well, Jason simply claims that survival is but a choice and pushes Ben to the ground while insisting that they should look for clues in this Twilight Zone / Dr. Caligari type of room. Jason spots a hatch on the floor and they proceed to open it. But soon enough, they realize that there's some gooey stuff in their hands and they've been drugged. Now the top of the hatch reads, "Feel free to leave, but note, you should find the antidote." So the next thing to do while they're tripping their balls off is to look for it as the room's static begins to blink enough to cause a seizure. Ben accidentally finds it, and before he has any time to be a decent human being, Jason jumps him and a fight to death begins. Ben wins the fight, and Jason dies after hitting his skull with the corner of the wall. Our winner falls down the hatch and gets taken to the last room, which turns out to be the same one we saw at the very beginning of the movie. He manages to escape the crushing after reaching the fireside as safe haven and wins the game. Hooray! We now go back to the poison room where a couple of people in hazmat suits enter to pick up Mike's and Zoe's bodies. However, Zoe outsmarted them and found an oxygen mask she used to survive, played dead for a while, and finally knocked them both down to steal a gun and take off to God knows where. Ben walks as the victor of the game and meets the game master, who confesses a group of the most powerful people pay to see ordinary people fight for their lives in these so-called escape rooms. Only this time, they wanted to see how things would turn out when putting only sole survivors to accidents together in a room, or several of them for this matter. As Ben claims his $10,000 prize, the game master tries to strangle him. You know, no witness allowed. However, Zoe comes out of nowhere and lands a couple of shots. The game master is somehow still standing, but after a struggle, Ben and Zoe end his life. We're now taken to the hospital where Ben is recovering while Zoe sits by his side. The police arrive and ask Zoe to accompany them to the building where the escape room was allegedly in, but when they get there, the whole structure in the inside had vanished overnight. 6 months go by and Ben and Zoe get together to catch up, but Zoe insists that they have to stop the whole madness somehow, while Ben just wants to let go, claiming that she might just be experiencing survivor's guilt. He eventually agrees to go with her to a different city to investigate the people behind the whole thing, but the company in charge of these deadly escape rooms hears about this and designs a new escape room, which is not so much of a room, but rather the plane both of them have tickets for. And that's all for today. Make sure to stay tuned as I will be doing Escape Room 2 very soon. In the meantime, let me know in the comments what you thought of this movie. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. See you next time.